Welcome everyone to the 2022 General Election Forum featuring candidates for Winona City Council. I am Stephanie Nuttall, your moderator for this event. Our 2022 forum co-sponsors are Advocacy Center of Winona, AAUW Winona Branch, Engage Winona, Home and Community Options, Project Fine, Winona Occupational Rehabilitation Services, and Winona State University Department of Social Work. We are providing this forum via Government Access Channels HBC 19 and Spectrum Charter 987. The general public is invited to be in attendance, and we'd like to thank the City of Winona for allowing us to hold this educational forum in the council chambers and for the use of staff and technical assistance with this forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization organized at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to become educated and participate in government. While we as a league do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties, candidates, or tell voters how to answer referendum questions. We will read statements from candidates who are unable to attend forums. For our home viewing audience, you may call in your questions to be considered this evening by calling 507-457-8286. A volunteer will write your question and take it to the question facilitator table. This evening, we will welcome candidates for Ward 2, Jeff Heima, Ward 4, George Borzakowski and Amber Beisman, and at-large, Michelle Alexander and Jerome Christensen. This forum is intended to provide the voters with information so they can make an educated choice on the ballot. The views expressed in this educational forum are those from the candidates. We do encourage our members as individuals, as we encourage each of you in the home and live audience, to get involved in your community. The LWV Winona participation policy and ground rules were provided to the candidates along with their invitations to attend. Some things to keep in mind: this is a live cable TV broadcast. The public was invited to submit questions for the candidates through the LWV Winona email site or its Facebook page. Question facilitators from the LWV and its co-sponsors have viewed the questions, and the LWV moderator has final selection of questions for candidates. This forum is being recorded, may not be edited, and must be broadcast in its entirety and in accord with all FCC regulations. The LWV will determine questions to be asked, and attempts in good faith will be made to cover all areas of interest expressed in advance of the forum by the public. The candidates do not know the questions in advance, and they will be answering in random order. Questions that are hostile, partisan, embarrassing, inappropriate, or of a personal nature will not be asked. Questions on similar topics may be grouped, and questions may be revised as the moderator sees fit. All questions become property of the League of Women Voters. Our timekeeper for this evening is Wendy Draves. Candidates will strictly observe the time limits on responses, and the timekeeper will hold up cards to indicate that time is about to expire. Once the stop card is displayed, the candidate will stop at the end of their current sentence. For responses, candidates will have 2 minutes for their opening statement, 1 minute to respond to questions, and 1 minute for a closing statement. Again, the candidates with us today are Ward 2, Jeff Heima, Ward 4, George Borzakowski and Amber Beisman, and at-large, Michelle Alexander and Jerome Christensen. The candidates have agreed to allow me to address them by their first names. So at this point, we are going to begin with our opening statements, and for this, our first speaker will be Jeff.
I was hoping I'd go last, but that's okay. My name is Jeff Heima, and I'm running for Ward 2. I want to start by thanking the League of Women Voters for putting on this event, particularly Ruth Charles and Lynn Thayer, who did all the legwork starting back with the emails that I received, I think, maybe in August to start this. So I've lived in Winona's Ward 2 for 26 years. I've raised 2 sons here, both who attended and graduated from Madison Elementary, Winona Middle School, and Winona Senior High School. I retired last January from working, But prior to that, worked within public education for 40 years, 20 years in teaching, the last 6 of that here in Winona. I taught at the Winona Senior High School, teaching social studies, secondary, and I left that in about 2003. Then from then till now, I worked as a field staff for Education Minnesota, where I negotiated collective bargaining agreements, resolved grievances, and worked as a lobbyist on labor and educational issues at the state capitol. I hold bachelor's degrees from University of Toledo, California State University at Sacramento, and I hold a master's degree from University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point. So I think that's the fundamentals. I want to start out also by thanking Eileen Moeller, who was the candidate in Ward 2 who I am running to replace. If she wasn't not running again, I would not be here now. I think she's done a wonderful job, and I realize that I am benefiting from all of the hard work that she put in. And so I guess that's up to 2 minutes, so I will stop there. Thank you. That went quick.
George.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening. I've been to many forums in my time representing the city, and this is the first forum where I'm going to need reading glasses. So, and if I appear to be a bit nervous to everyone, I am. So, just like to begin that, first of all, I am a lifelong Winona 4th Ward resident. I've been in the ward my entire life, and I've never left the ward. I am a graduate of Cotter High School, and I currently am an adjunct instructor in forklift safety training at Southeast Technical College, along by holding many other training certificates from them in safety, in business, in conducting classes, so on. I retired from the Peerless Jane Company in 2019 after 45 and a half years. I have been 4th Ward Council Representative since 1999, and I also serve on the Winona Port Authority and its revolving loan fund. And I also serve as chairman of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority on the west end of town and on the east end. We govern the public housing. I am married, and I have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. And as I always say in all the forums I've been into, if there is a question tonight that I may have to do more research to give an answer to, I will return that answer at one of our council meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Amber.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum with the goal of thoughtfully engaging citizens in the democratic process, as I also believe it is important for every individual to have the tools and the opportunity to have their voice heard as a vote. I am an educator, community activist, mother of 2, and nurse in training. I grew up in rural Minnesota, and I developed my strong work ethic, problem-solving skills working on my grandparents' dairy farm. I've volunteered many hours of community service in high school, including serving on the Habitat for Humanity board. In college, I also served with Habitat for Humanity as a translator, taught ESL to adult immigrants, and worked with individuals with disabilities. Since moving to Winona 5 years ago, I have served as the vice president of the WK PTA, volunteered to work on the strategic planning committee at Southeast Tech, and the City of Winona Parks and Recs subcommittee. I am currently the treasurer of the Student Senate at Southeast, and all these experiences have taught me skills that will be useful to represent the 4th Ward. I have a passion for giving voice to marginalized groups and those who are generally unseen. Winona has a poverty rate of 19.1%, which is well above the national average. I want to make the City of Winona ensure that they improve, protect, and maintain locations, buildings, and human resources that serve the most vulnerable, and truly invest in building a strong community connection amongst our citizens and our council. While participating in Engage Winona's Lived Experience Leader Program, I discovered the courage to run for office, and I believe I can make a positive impact on my community. I hope that the residents of the 4th Ward will give me the opportunity to represent them in the next term. I guess I have more time.
Nope, you're good. Michelle.
Hi, I want to thank the League of Women Voters, the WSU students, and all of their partners, as well as my fellow panelists and the community for their participation in this event. It's vital to allow us an opportunity to answer questions and to engage with you and answer questions you have for us. I am a lifelong resident, or a 40-year resident of Winona. I grew up here. I graduated from Winona Senior High School and Winona State University. And I decided 12 years ago to run for office. I am unmarried and have no children. However, I do have 29 nieces and nephews, which keep me very, very busy. I serve on the Port Authority, on the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. I serve on the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities and the Economic Development Committee, promoting our city and advocating for us at the state. I serve as the chairperson of the Winona International Friendship Association, our sister city program. And I also volunteer at the Historic Society on their board and for Home and Community Options. I have spent the last 12 years of my life dedicated to working for Winona. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. And I hope that I can count on all of you to vote for me on November 8th to continue my service to the community. Thank you.
Jerome.
Good evening. My thanks to the League and for once again hosting this event. It's a real service to our community and a service to the spirit of democracy. It was 20 years ago yesterday, while I was in my kitchen fixing my lunch, that NPR's midday program was interrupted with the announcement that Senator Paul Wellstone was plane had crashed just short of the runway at the Virginia Evelyn Airport. All aboard were believed dead. He was just Paul when I first got acquainted with him back in the early 1980s, while he was working with farm families while we were struggling to save our land and our homes as the farm economy and our rural communities were collapsing all around us. People, families, their well-being, their security, their quality of life were his unchanging and unchallenged priorities, and priorities I'm proud to share. We all do better when we all do better. That was his slogan. That was his mantra. It was at the core of everything he hoped to achieve. And he was right, you know. We all share in what we call the common good. We all have a share in this community that we call Winona, and we all, every one of us, deserve a good place to live, a good place to work, and a good place to play. Yeah, we all do better when we all do better. And my pledge to you is to do my best to do all that I can to see to it that we all do better. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now ready for our first question, and we will start our question with Jerome. If elected, what is your number one priority for the city of Winona in 2023?
My number one priority for the city of Winona in 2023, to make it successfully to 2024. I think in terms of what's on the city's agenda and what's on the horizon, the most important thing that we're looking at is completing and evaluating the comprehensive plan. That's going to give us a blueprint, a guidepost for the immediate future and for the future down the road. We had over 1,000 citizens contributing to the plan, and it really should give us a pretty good idea of where we ought to go.
Thank you. Amber.
If elected to represent the 4th Ward in the next term, in the next year, I want to invest in improving the rec center and all of its support, staff, and programming, as that is the number one thing I've heard in the 4th Ward from its people, and I just want to amplify the voices and focus on the issues that they're bringing forth.
Jeff?
I think my number one priority, Oh, thank you very much, George. That's very helpful. I would say two things. One, I think from City Point, as far as issues, the law enforcement center and the fire station, it seems like we are kind of back to square one with that. So I would assume in 2023, that's going to come to the forefront once again as we explore the different options and try to sort out a solution for that. In conjunction with that, I hope we will be able to continue to go forward with the rec center, senior center combination to make both of those things better and to go forward with some of the plans that have already been previously developed. For me personally, I've got a lot to learn. And so I'm looking forward to my number one priority individually is to get to know my constituents in Ward 2 and begin to understand their perspectives on the issues in Winona so that I can reflect those in my actions. Thank you.
George?
It always has been and always will be to represent the people of the Fourth Ward, their needs and their concerns. When someone brings a concern to me, I take ownership of that concern until we get a resolution to it. Do we always get the resolution that we want? Not all the time, but most of the time we do. But it's simply to bring their voice to the table, represent them, and continue to support them with their neighborhood problems, whatever it may be. So just represent the people. Thank you.
And Michelle?
For me, it's budget. I want to safeguard the investment the community makes by paying their taxes, and that when we invest properly and maintain a healthy budget, we're able to accomplish any of the things our community desires, from a new ERC building, Emergency Response Center, to a new rec center, to improvement to our parks and streets and our failing and aging infrastructure. So my main goal is to watch that budget, make sure that we're not depleting our reserve funds, and that we're appropriately allocating funds to the resources the community values the most. And right now what I'm hearing is improvement to parks and trail systems. So that would be my priority.
All right. Moving on to question number 2. And for this question, we will be starting with Michelle. What do you believe is the best solution or process for determining a solution for police and fire in Winona?
So for me, it's finding the solution that is going to best fit the community's needs at a cost that is the most affordable. We have a few options available that we're exploring. I know that we're still in conversations with the county. And I think if the county and the city come together and the community has their voice involved, we're going to find the outcome that's going to best situate and serve the community. We do need to address the infrastructure, health needs of both the fire and the police. Currently, they are in facilities that do not meet standards for state or federal requirements and are in unsafe, unhealthy environments. So just to meet those needs, we'll have to buckle down and do it, but there are alternatives available. We have buildings that are owned and can be rehabbed and locations that are available for building.
Thank you. Jerome?
I think that essentially Michelle has outlined the procedures that we will need to follow, particularly. I think I'd put particular emphasis that we have to pay attention to the expertise of the consultants who've studied this problem and probably have a better insight to it than a bunch of lay people sitting around a table. It's absolutely critical that we provide adequate facilities for our police, for our fire, for our emergency services.
George?
Well, we all certainly know where we do not want a public safety building. We found that out here a few weeks back. Is there a place where we can put the two together? You know, I don't know. It's our best way to get funding if the two are together. But if we need to separate the two, Winona Fire right now, we already have their home down on East 3rd Street. It's already there. We bought the property well in advance. There's more than enough room there to build onto the fire station. As far as the police goes, I think there's opportunities out there, but we will be able to find a good home for them, and we need police and fire for their protection and our help in this community.
Jeff?
When I look at situations like this, I kind of use a three-pronged approach. First and foremost is to listen. And we did that earlier with a meeting here where it was spoke loud and clear that the East End Rec Center was not the appropriate place. And then we need to do the research as to the other alternatives, as Michelle outlined. And then we need to work towards a consensus and arrive, because we need to move forward together. I agree that I think the current location on 3rd Street needs to be explored. I also think that we need to back up and explore the relationship with the county that has been fruitful for quite some time, and see if there's not a way that we can perhaps utilize things efficiently in that regard once again going forward.
And Amber?
First, I think we do need to consult the experts and get the information. But then our job as a representative is to take into consideration how that will impact our constituents. So knowing that a location is too valuable to the community to propose a project on it is important to understand. And then we need to make sure that we have the appropriate EMS and emergency services to meet the needs of the community and the standards that are federal and state imposed. We need it to be a fiscally responsible option, and obviously, having already purchased the land for the fire station, that's a good place to start since we've already made that fiscal investment. And then, of course, looking for remodeling where the police currently are or finding an appropriate alternative location.
Thank you. On to question 3, and we will be starting with Amber. Do you believe the city is adequately addressing pedestrian safety, particularly on Broadway? If so, why? If not, what do you think can be done to address safety issues?
I don't think we're adequately addressing the safety on Broadway, and that's another issue I've heard and read about in the 4th Ward, particularly from the Engage Winona study they did in 2019. And I also live on Broadway. People drive too fast. So we should. Unfortunately, we passed up the opportunity to do the road reduction a few years back. We need more of the pedestrian flashing signs. We need to look at reducing the traffic and adding those bike lanes. Those are some great starts. And there's other infrastructure in that area that needs to be addressed with parking and trains and truck traffic. So we need to consult the experts and deal with the issues on Broadway and Mankato.
Jeff?
About 20 years ago, I remember that on the intersection just past Sioux Street, there was a young boy that was coming home from school at Madison School and was struck and killed. Not too long after that, a stop sign went up there. And I think we have, unfortunately, a bad habit of looking in the rearview mirror for solutions. In other words, when something bad happens, then we look for a solution. I'd like to move forward with a proactive approach. I think I agree the ship has probably sailed on the previous project on Broadway, but I think minimally, especially as we head into the season of darkness here, lighted crossings. There's I think one, and then you've got the stoplight, but there is very little, if anything, from Franklin Street going east. And I think minimally you need at least several, particularly where, closer to where the schools are. I'll stop. Thank you.
Michelle?
Yes. So you can always improve safety throughout the city. I think what we're doing right now is improving all of the access points along the route and unifying the crosswalks. And then we're going to be in discussion about minimizing some parking along the heavily pedestrian areas to open up viewability of cars to pedestrian. And the lights are being addressed by the city by asking for LED and brighter lights to be installed along the walkway pathways. And I think part of it is reminding people and teaching people about pedestrian safety. I think we sometimes get so wrapped up in what we're doing, we forget that we're on a major thoroughfare as drivers, bikers, and pedestrians. And I think there has to be a way that we can better address the walkability issue near campus, where it seems to be the biggest issue, by some education. And I do think the flashing lights work. I think there are a few more intersections where we could put them in. And I also think we could move the speedometer down to the other end of Broadway so we can see the speed on that end.
Jerome?
Yeah. In the time that I was reporting and going to the cop shop every morning, reports of accidents and near miss on Broadway involving pedestrians were an all too common occurrence. We've had numerous fatalities. There hasn't been anything physically done of any significance to reduce that. A couple of flashing lights, a few signs, they look nice, but essentially they're cosmetic. We passed up $2 million in federal aid funds when the council on a 4-3 vote turned down the plan that would reduce traffic dangers on that route to pedestrians. And I think that that's something that we really have to address. It's not something that's going away. It's not something that we can get rid of, deal with with a few simple measures, but it's something that is a public safety issue and needs to be looked at that way.
George?
Broadway. We hear about Broadway all the time. And, yes, lighted crossings would be, lighten them up, make them brighter. But first of all, as drivers, we need to know that Broadway is 30 miles an hour. It's not 40, it's not 45, it's 30 miles an hour. We do not drive 30 miles an hour. We go 35, we go 40, we go 45, whatever it may be. And of course, for pedestrians, we are to stop for those. Sometimes we do stop, sometimes the people do not stop. In regards to Jerome's point about the money of the $1.9 million for Broadway, the previous council had an opportunity to vote that in. That vote would have went 4-3, but the question was not called. When the new council came in, hearing from the people, we then went on a 4-3 vote not to pursue the road diet. But they did have a chance to pass that road diet.
Thank you. Moving on to question 4. And for this question, we'll start with George. What, if anything, do you think the city can and should do to build tourism and/or grow businesses in Winona?
Well, I think we're doing a good job of it right now. We have, the Convention and Visitors Bureau do it. Our industries do it. Through the Port Authority, which is the economic development arm of the city, we have a revolving loan fund that businesses can apply to for assistance in their businesses. We have helped many of them out. In turn, they go and they support our community. They support projects. They support, recreation programs. We're doing a lot already. And a lot of times, people will step up on their own and they will do things already. We do have plans in place and it does work.
Michelle?
So I think we have some pretty spectacular business partners here already. I think what we need to do is work to find ways to allow for their development, growth, and expansion right here in our town. I think that the Visit Winona does a spectacular job of promoting the community for tourism. And on top of that, we have a nonprofit organizational groups that are second to none in forming art and festivals and in bringing people to our town as tourists. We have boats that stop here and dock, and this is all work that has been done through Visit Winona, the City Council, and the Port Authority. And I think we just have to continue doing what we're doing, continue to trust in the partners we have, and allocate our resources when necessary.
Jerome?
Yeah. Winona often describes itself as being an island city. An island city implies that we're isolated. Whereas it used to be, Winona was known as the gate city, a gateway, an opening out into the world and in inviting the world in. I think that if we're going to move beyond where we are with tourism, where we are with bringing in people, we have to position Winona as a tourist hub, reaching out and coordinating with other regional centers to bring in visiting groups, to bring in visiting individuals, and to publicize. We can't do this on our own. We're one little town, but we do have remarkable attractions and the potential to grow it.
Thank you. Amber?
I think Winona has a lot of unique opportunities geographically and in arts and tourism with our trails. One of the things we could improve on is making sure the right hand is talking to the left hand. So with Visit Winona, they do a great job, but there are niche groups with biking and hiking that are available, but maybe under the surface, people are not aware of them. So if we can figure out a better form of communication between our great groups and create opportunities for more people, I think that would be great. And this will be included in our comprehensive plan, so we need to look at all the people that have been investing time in that and take strategies from there, as well as improving our social media marketing campaign. I think there are social media platforms in which we could utilize that we are not.
And Jeff?
I think the things that have been going on in the last 5 years have been tremendous, especially downtown. I think you've seen some new development and some new buildings that are kind of creating the critical mass that allow for small businesses to succeed. I think the areas that we need to continue to emphasize, besides the good things that are already being done by as already mentioned, Visit Winona, Port Authority, the council and such, is I think there should be more help for small business owners. Especially to help maintain the historical aspects of their properties. I think also we need to emphasize the parks and trails in Winona. We have some tremendous natural resources at our fingertips here that I think there are plans to develop, and I would like to see them go through to fruition.
Thank you. All right, question number 5, and for this one we will start with Jeff. Budget is always a concern. What do you believe can be done to balance provision of services with reasonable taxes, and where would you put your priorities?
Oh, we're saving the easy questions till later. I think the budget is it's an interesting one. I actually I met for an hour with the city manager yesterday to try to begin to get an understanding of it and what have you. I think what you're seeing is some natural increases due to inflation and a variety of other things. And I think you're starting to address some of it by some of the development downtown in that you are increasing the size of the pie, if you will, of taxation, in that there is more property value out there and more property contribute, and more tax, so thus more taxation that contributes, to your budget. The rest of it is going to take some time to learn and understand the nuance, and so I'm not going to pretend that I have a solution here for that. But as I mentioned earlier, I've got a lot to learn, and that's probably the area where I'll start.
Thank you. Jerome?
Yes, I think one of the things that we have to look at is increasing our revenue stream and diversifying it. It's the knee-jerk to look at municipal revenue as being a property tax issue. However, our neighboring cities, Rochester, Albert Lea, Austin, Mankato, are all using a half-cent sales tax to finance projects and priorities. And that's something that if we look back to 1998 when we had a half-cent sales tax to finance the Dredge project, which filled and led to the whole commercial development that gave us Walmart, Menards, and everything else, was very successful here. I think that we have to look at that and look at grant funding and look at aggressively at other forms of revenue other than just simply throwing up our hands and saying that we have to either cut or raise property taxes.
Michelle?
I wish we had more options than just property tax. All of the time, whenever we do a big project, we go out for grants and bonding and request local option sales tax. But unfortunately, you have to get state approval, and they have changed the law. And you have to get voter approval for any project that's on that list. And that project must meet a requirement that is difficult for most cities, which it must be of regional significance. So I think, yes, we should use every opportunity to go for funds in every capacity we can, but managing the budget requires us to allow for development. For instance, when we allowed Fastenal to build their new headquarters here, that raised our tax base 1,100%. Those are the kinds of developments that provide quality jobs, bring people here that want to live and add value to our community, and keep our tax rate low. So I think it's just a balancing act between development, managed development, and the programming that we want to have here as citizens. If that's parks, if that's arts and culture, it's just got to be a community decision on where those other allocated funds are spent.
Amber?
Well, budgets are not my expertise, I will say that, but I do have the capacity to learn them and critically examine them. I do like Jerome's idea here of the half-cent tax rate, sales tax that would equitably spread that burden of tax or the burden of funding across every person that visits our community, in fact, and not just homeowners. I think the comprehensive plan will give us an idea of also how to target our spending. And I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry. So in short, though, I would like to avoid, obviously, increasing taxes on property owners and just taking the time to, again, learn the nuances and complexities of that. But I know I have the capacity to do so.
And George?
The budget. There are many costs that are out of our control. Health insurance, workers' comp, fuel, many things, maintenance costs. They're costs that we cannot control. And as we look at our basic services, streets, water, sewer, police, fire, library, our education department, park rec, it takes a lot of money to fund all those programs. We try to balance out whatever we're collecting for taxes on it, what the tax levy will be in order to balance that budget out. Now, the water department and sewer department, they operate on an enterprise fund. Everything coming out of the enterprise fund goes to fund those two departments. But like I say, it's a tough call for us, and it's one of the strongest challenges that any council rep will have. Thank you.
All right, question number 6, and we will start with George. Oh, take a drink. In October of 2022, the National Youth Tobacco Survey released data that shows 1 in 10, or 2.5 million middle and high school students vape and/or use e-cigarettes. Do you support any additional tobacco or other related restrictions in Winona? Why or why not?
I do support tobacco-related restrictions. Tobacco is not good for your health. I lit up a cigarette when I was 16 years old. I choked and I gagged and I smelled like an ashtray, and I couldn't figure out why anyone would want to be smoking. But if it's their thing, that's what it is. I believe it was, I don't want to put the person's name, but I voted for, I think it was T21 that came to the city council, and the council unanimously voted on, it was some sort of a ban. I don't remember what it was. But no, I do support restrictions on smoking and, vaping. I don't know if it's bad for your health. I've never done it, but I would support restrictions.
Amber?
Well, as a healthcare professional, I would definitely support restrictions on tobacco, especially vaping. Vaping is far more dangerous even than smoking. And there's so much unknown about how to resolve popcorn lungs, which is essentially what vaping does to your lungs. It blows up your interior bronchioles. So kids don't understand the consequences, and so even young adults don't understand the consequences of vaping. So if we can stop it before it starts, or it somehow motivate those who have started to stop, that would be a great thing for the city and everybody in it.
Jeff?
I would look into it. I think I'm certainly against, and anything against smoking and vaping. I'm not sure how much of this is state law priority versus what is possible as far as local ordinance. So I would need to get an understanding of that first. But overall, absolutely, anything that would reduce smoking and vaping would be something that I would be in support of.
Michelle?
As George indicated, the council did unanimously vote to support the T21 bill. We did forward that onto the state, but it is really a state issue. I will admit that I'm enough of a libertarian that it felt a little bit wrong to stop an 18-year-old from making choices for themselves, especially as we asked them to vote and get married or serve in the armed services. I did struggle with that, but I do acknowledge that the vaping is horrible, and they specifically target youth with their the way that they present it to them. And so for that reason, I did support sending that up to the state, but I do believe it came to nothing.
Jerome?
Yeah, unlike George, my first cigarette tasted pretty damn good. And I kept it up for about 20 years. And I have to admit, I enjoyed every last one of them, and probably would have continued, except it was going to kill me. That was, and what really got me to quit was the fact that I literally ran out of places to smoke, except in my old '79 Pinto, which wasn't any too satisfactory. So I was going through life wanting a cigarette, which was frustrating. I think that, again, restrictions on smoking work. Restriction on tobacco use work. I've never understood vaping. I think it's smoking for sissies, people who don't really have the courage to go out and play with matches on a daily basis. But again, in order to be effective, it's got to be a statewide restriction. Otherwise, you just go to Stockton and buy all you want.
All right, moving on to question 7, and we'll start with Jerome on this one. What is one thing that is not currently being done that you think the city could do to benefit its citizens?
What is not being done that the city could do to benefit its citizens? You're asking me for one thing, which is probably, it would depend on the citizen. I mean, there is no single action that can be taken that's going to benefit or harm everyone. We're a community, and I think that the role of the community or the city council is to promote, and the city is to promote the common good, and to look at things that put people, to put their needs and their quality of life first, and put that, making that the priority. There's no just one thing.
Amber?
So as I mentioned before, I'm really into serving and advocating for unseen or underprivileged groups. And one of those things that many cities, not unique to Winona, doesn't serve is changing tables that are for individuals larger than infants. So adults or children who wear briefs cannot participate in the community because there is nowhere for them to be toileted without lying on the floor. So we could simply install adult-sized changing tables at the Bob Welsh pool or other facilities that we build or remodel to make sure that something as simple as being able to go out in public because you have a place to use the bathroom is available. So accessibility in many forms, but for me, that's one of them.
George?
I'm glad Jerome got that question first. I had a few moments to think on this here. I drive around town quite a bit, and I see people, they were hanging in bus shelters and sleeping on the sidewalks. And there are organizations in town that help these people, give them shelter, give them a place to sleep at night. I guess I'd probably like to see us do more, and I mentioned in my different articles and things, I'd like to see us do a little bit more to help perhaps the homeless. And that would probably even include my own self doing a little more than what I do right now.
Jeff?
I agree with Jerome. It's hard to narrow it down to one thing. So I'll speak specifically to Ward 2. Within Ward 2, there has been some old playground equipment that understandably was dated, no longer met, OSHA approval, and was removed. And that's understandable. It should have been done. But it hasn't been replaced. And so one of the things that I would like to see is more small playground equipment that are within walking distance of most families. I think we do a wonderful job with destination parks, like the Lions Club Park down by the band shell. That's a wonderful facility, but it's a destination facility. Most people in Winona have to get into a car and drive to that for their kids to play and enjoy it. I would like to see some smaller, simpler things that people can just take their stroller, walk their kids to, ride their bikes to, that they could enjoy. So that'd be my one thing.
Michelle?
I actually think that the city does a really good job, but of late, in all of our discussions with the ERC, the one that keeps coming up is mental health initiatives. Working with the community, and especially our youth who are vulnerable, finding resources other than jail, or finding the resource for an individual that might have mental health needs, but they're finding themselves in the jail system. And the city did put money towards that in the current budget, and we're working with the county and the Hiawatha Valley and the hospital to come up with some programming, and I really think that is something that the city doesn't have, or maybe needs to partner with others that have the resources to try to address some of that in the community.
All right, moving on to, I think, what will be our last question for the evening. And we will start with Michelle. What skills do you have that will help you represent all of your constituents, regardless of whether they voted for you?
I listen. And I can assure you, one question I've never asked is, did you vote for me before I help them? It doesn't matter to me, because whether you voted for the people up here or not, we're here to represent the community as a whole. And after 12 years on the council and serving on a variety of boards, you get to meet a lot of people from different walks of life. And you make yourself available, whether it's in the bar, at the grocery store, at church, right here at this table. You just need to be accessible so that people can tell you what they're concerned about. They need someone to listen and respond, and as I think George said, the answer isn't always yes, but sometimes people just need to be heard, and I think that's one thing I excel at, is listening, and so that's what I would bring to the table.
George?
Accessibility. I've been on the council for 24 years. I have been accessible to every constituent in the 4th Ward and throughout the city. I meet with these people. I'll meet with them in a coffee shop, at your home, in a pub, at my home, wherever you want to meet. I'll take ownership of your concern, as I said earlier, and I will continue to work till we get a resolution to that concern. But whether you voted for me or not, I'm there to help you. And all you need to do is call me, email me, text me, whatever it may be. I will be there. This afternoon, I was down looking at a railroad crossing down in the east end of town because of speeders going over it. So I don't compare that to Broadway, but a little more dangerous. They may hit a train, but it's all accessibility, being available, and I am available.
Jerome?
I pretty much made a career out of talking to people, listening to people, paying attention to what they say, and thinking about it, and working with it. I spent almost 30 years over there at that table, paying attention to what was going on at this table, and over at the school board, and at the county board. And I think that I can bring that that combination of experiences to play in dealing with the issues that involve not just the city, but our interaction with the county, with the school district. We've got to break down silos. We've got to start looking at opportunities to work together, to work as a unified community rather than as various governmental units, private enterprise, etc. I think that that's what I would be bringing.
Amber?
I would, as an educator and a healthcare worker, I bring a lot of compassion and empathy to the board, along with critical thinking and education. I'm a good listener. I don't just listen, though. I validate. Your experience might be different than my experience. That doesn't make it any less valuable. And acknowledge that my form of thinking and some issues might be wrong, or perhaps standing up against the big guy. For the little guy, I'm not afraid to back down from standing up and doing what's right. I don't always have the answer, but I will always seek to find the most moral and equitable option out there.
And Jeff?
I think most people have a real need to be heard, and it's been mentioned before about listening. It's something that I have found that half the time people don't even want a solution, they just want to be heard. And so that's something that I think I've had a lot of practice at, is listening. I also do the research then to find out what the data is to support different solutions. And I've had a lot of experience in developing consensus around a particular solution, so that it's not a us versus them, but it's a we. I'm a firm believer that all of us are always smarter than any one of us, but it's a trick to get all of us to participate and to be able to feel ownership in any particular issue. It's something that I think I've been able to do at times in the past.
All right, we are now near the end of our forum, and it's time for our candidates to present their up to 1 minute closing remark. For this, we will begin with Amber.
I'd like to thank again the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this forum, and I hope that I am allotted the opportunity to build relationships with the people in the city of Winona, particularly in the 4th Ward, the nonprofits, and other community groups, so that we can bring a strong community sense, empower the citizens to improve their community, making my top concern that open line of communication with residents, but also making them the ones that have the power to make the change and changes. They have their ideas that are going to make our city more equitable and prosperous, and I would appreciate your vote in November, and to bring a new perspective to the table here at the council in Winona.
Thank you. Jeff?
There we go. I want to thank the league as well for putting this on and for allowing me the opportunity to be here tonight. I realize that my situation is a little bit unusual. I'm running unopposed for Ward 2. And what I'm looking for from folks is a little bit of patience as I develop and learn the knowledge that is going to be required to represent Ward 2. I hope to hear from as many people as possible so that I can develop that. I want to end with the main reason that I'm doing this is simply, as I was growing up, I always thought democracy was pretty much a foregone conclusion, something that you didn't really even think about. With kind of the uneasiness of the last few years, it is something that I don't think is the foregone conclusion that it was when I was growing up. So I wanted to be a part of it and try to make things better moving forward. So hopefully we'll be able to do that.
Jerome.
Yeah, perhaps this is a good time to give a little thought to some words that often attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson. Events are in the saddle and they ride mankind. We can sit here and say what we're going to do and not going to do all night. And the truth is, virtually everything that the council done isn't based on campaign promises. It's based on the needs of the moment. We could all agree that our top priority is fixing the streets, but if the water system goes to pot, well, providing potable water will trump and preempt patching those potholes. What we will bring to this table are the principles and priorities that shape and guide the decisions we make. Mine is a commitment to people, to families, to our well-being, our security, our quality of life. It's a commitment to the common good and to building and sustaining our communities. And if you agree, well, I thank you for your support.
George.
First of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters and everyone that has been involved in this process tonight. A very, very big thank you. I've been told sometimes, or I've read, where I'm stagnant and complacent. You don't get to serve in an elected position for 24 years being stagnant or complacent. There's been 10 new housing developments constructed in the 4th Ward. 85% of the Mill and Overlay project went into the 4th Ward. We have the best shopping center in the 4th Ward. Sobieski Park was built, but the Neighborhood Watch Group and many people and many private donors. There's many number one companies. I take ownership of the people that I represent in the ward, and I will continue to do so. And during those years, I have built many working relationships with people in the 4th Ward and in the city of Winona, and I would like to continue that by re-electing Borzakowski on November 8th. Thank you.
And Michelle.
I want to thank the League again for putting on this event. When I ran for office 13 years ago, I had no expectation that I'd actually be elected. But even so, I had a list of desires and wants. One was the promotion of arts and culture as a vital part of our economy. 2 was a second train stop at the Winona Depot. And 3rd was the revitalization of downtown Winona. What I learned is that through collaboration with community members, businesses, nonprofits, and the city, you can make anything happen, as evidenced by our booming downtown. I am engaged in this community, volunteer ardently. I am informed on the issues. I'm dedicated to a better Winona, and I'm an experienced leader that listens to you. So I ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We are at the end of our time for this forum, and we want to thank all of our candidates for a very informative event. The LWV would also like to thank all of our co-sponsors once again, Advocacy Center of Winona, AAUW Winona Branch, Engage Winona, Home and Community Options, Project FINE, Winona Occupational Rehabilitation Services, and Winona State University Department of Social Work. We'd also like to thank HBC for recording this educational forum. These forums in their entirety will be made available to the public for viewing prior to the general election on the LWV Winona Facebook page within a few days. We'd like to share that this is the final evening of LWV Winona General Election 2022 candidate forums. The audience present in the City Hall chambers is invited to remain for our last forum of 2022, which is Winona Area Public Schools. That will start at 7:30. The 2022 LWV Winona forums were all featured live on government access channels, and the public was in attendance. They are all available through our Facebook page or YouTube. Just web search either location. The dates were October 11th for the Minnesota Legislative, Senate, and House candidates, and October 18th for the Winona County Public Officials and County Board candidates. We remind the public that if you see anything used by candidates for promotion or campaign, that we do not authorize or endorse those candidates to use our recorded forums in any manner. Vote 411. The LWV MN and local LWV across Minnesota have encouraged candidates to share more about their candidacy on the national website, vote411.org. We know most of the candidates in the Winona area have submitted information to that website, and that website does provide information on candidates that are on your ballot for your precinct. Check it out. You can find information on registering to vote, check your ballot, and candidate answers to LWV questions. If you need information on becoming a registered voter, you can call Winona County Auditor Treasurer or the Winona City Clerk. Online registration is now closed for the general election. It ended on October 18th, but Minnesota does have registration at the polls. If you're not pre-registered to vote, you can register on the day of the election. Check vote411.org for more information on voting and what you need if you do need to register at the polls. You can vote by mail or in person at Winona County, September 23rd through November 7th during normal business hours. The Winona County Auditor Treasurer's Office is open during regular business hours to obtain a vote by mail ballot or in-person early voting. You can also request a mail option ballot from the Secretary of State's website. Process is simple and easy, but they must be received by November 8th, Election Day, regardless of postmark. If you're concerned about your mail-in ballot arriving to the Winona County Auditor Treasurer's Office, you can hand deliver it to the counter at the Winona County Office Building on Washington Street between 2nd and 3rd Streets in downtown Winona. Again, ballots must be dropped off by 3 p.m. on the day of the general election, November 8th. So please vote. The general election is on Tuesday, November 8th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. through 8 p.m. Thank you and have a great evening, and let's give our candidates a round of applause.